Hi, it's Lucy here, and I'm going to be creating some lovely spring feeling cards today using just a few supplies. I want to use this fishnet style background die a few ways today, so that's what I'll be focusing on. I love it and I have more ideas, so I know I'll use it again in the future too. And I ran out of time to use the other die, although I did create one card and I'll show you that in a moment. I'm also going to use these two flower die sets, and all of these die sets can be found at Inlovearts, and I have a special discount code for you I'll mention more shortly. These are some of the flowers that I created with them, and I'll show you how I made them in the video. I'll recreate a similar background to this one in a moment too. And here's a finished card using the other background die. I'll do this technique with the fishnet background so you can see how I did it, and it's a great way to use up glitter. So to begin with, the first card, I started with a heavy cardstock and I want to find an ink that complements it. I'm trying to decide if I want a bright teal colour or a green, and I've decided the green will look best with the flowers. I would love to try so many different colour combinations with cardstock and ink. I think they'd all look really great. I'll pop it through my 6-inch die cutting machine facing upwards, and it cuts out perfectly even on this heavy cardstock. And once I've done that, I'll keep them all in place using the die. And with the pink version I just showed before, I took it all out of the die but kept all the pieces in place. And it doesn't really matter which way you do it. The negative to inking while keeping it in the die is that I have to clean the metal die when I'm done, but the ink does come off easily. With the pink one, I inked mostly the bottom of each diamond, but this time I'll try inking more to the left of each diamond, and I'll call them diamonds because I'm not really sure what this shape is called. Then I'll keep them all together as much as possible. If you have a roll of press and seal, that may help with this technique, but that's very difficult to find here in Oz. So I'm just going to add some glue to the top diamonds and then quickly turn it over onto a piece of white card. And once the first pieces are in place, you can then use the frame to know where to add the other pieces. But if you're not comfortable with doing it the way I did, you can just turn it over and then individually glue each piece as well. And then the magic happens when we take off the frame and we're just left with the diamonds. Aren't they pretty? I do love the dimension that the green ink adds to it rather than being just cardstock. This is where you can tell if there's any that haven't been glued down and you can just pop them in place. It's pretty easy to see where they need to go then. I'm going to cut a small border around the diamonds, and if you have a good guillotine, I recommend using that. And please let me know which one you have if you love it. I have so many, but not one I love. So I'll just stick to my ruler and knife for now. Let's have a quick look at some combinations that we can do, because the flowers that I created can go on the different backgrounds and we can see which we like best. And I just thought that before I actually start sticking them down and choosing myself, I thought that I would show you the process of like popping them down and just seeing what goes with what. And if you choose a complementing colour palette, it means that everything goes with everything if you're making a few cards, but you want them all to be different. So now I'm going to use my wide double-sided tape, and this works perfectly with background dies, especially ones where you're going to either add papers or, in this case, I'm actually going to use glitter. So it sticks down the background die perfectly, and then to get rid of the stickiness on the diamonds, that's where I'll add the glitter. If you have a big stash of glitter, this is a really great way to use some up. Hopefully you can see it on here how sparkly and glittery it is. So now I've shown 2 ways of using the background die, and now here's a third, and I promise I'll finish 6 cards by the time we're through. And this time I'm going to add the frame over the top of some gorgeous pattern paper by Uniquely Creative. And first I'll cover the card front with the pattern paper, and I'm doing it the lazy way. I'll add tape to the card front, then turn it over onto the back of the pattern paper, and I can cut around it, and then I know everything's a perfect fit. I often cut my own card bases, so they may not always be a perfect size, so this trick makes sure everything is aligned. I'll add some oxide ink around the edges of the paper before adding some glue to the back of the frame. And I'll tap it onto scrap paper to get rid of any excess glue, then add it to the card. I'm going to add some fussy cut pieces and ephemera to the card as well, so I'll rummage in my box from the same paper collection to find what I need. And as I mentioned at the start, all these dies I'm using today are from Inlovearts, and this gorgeous background die is less than $8 US. Plus I have a 25% discount code, especially for my viewers. Isn't that generous? So that would bring this die down to less than $6 US, and you can use it so many ways. They also have free international shipping options as well. They have their own designers with so many dies and products to choose from, and I'm just giving you this information so that you have everything you need. They haven't asked me to say any of it. I've used many of their dies in my videos before. I really like this company, and I have a few more dies I'll be using soon as well, so stay tuned for that. And then once I find the bits I want to use, I'll tidy up any fussy cutting errors I've made. I'll ink the leaves with my Distress Oxide ink, and I'm using peeled paint. And then I'll bend the leaves and the flowers with my lollipop stick. And I find this gives a lot of beautiful depth to the card, and yet it's just paper. But it gives a more realistic look to them. I'll use something wider like my pen to bend the koala and also the branch that he's on. So the branch will be bent in one direction and the koala a little bit different direction. And that way I think it really makes him stand out, like he's a little bit rounded and cute. I do have a fussy cutting video where I go into a lot more detail about how I do these things to create this dimension on the cards, so make sure to look out for that one if you haven't seen it already. And I'll also bend the sentiment and just glue down the ends for a lovely soft curve too, and I think this is a really nice effect. It's time to glue everything down, and I'll mostly glue the ends of each piece so they keep their bends in the middle of each of the items. I get asked sometimes what glue I use, and my favourite is one I found at Bunnings, which is a hardware store in Australia. The brand is Sally's, and it's called Aquadare Interior Wood Glue. It comes in different sizes, and I buy the large one and transfer a small amount to my metal tipped glue bottle. And you can purchase the metal tipped glue bottles at Inlovearts as well as the dies. I find the glue sticks down most items, and I don't find it warps if used correctly, although I wouldn't use it to glue down layers of paper onto my card. I use my double-sided tape for that. I'm just using some foam dots in different areas as well, where I want to make sure that they keep their height in the middle of the leaf, say. I've been card making for a long time now, so I love to share my learnings and my bargains, and hopefully you learn something with each video. I love reading the comments where you mention you've learned a new technique or been inspired to try something new. It's so exciting for me to know my videos are being enjoyed. Oh, and then here's the finished card. So we'll see it again afterwards as well, and we'll get on to the next one. And this is the one where I've already done the green background. And so I'm just going to be doing the same technique with the flower bunch here and just bending everything around to give dimension and make all the flowers look like they've got height and movement, even though I'm just bending the outsides. Seeing as the background's already done, this is going to be a super quick card, as I'm just going to add the koalas again, and then I'll add the flower bundle, and I'm going to make this a Mother's Day card because I feel like the little koala with his little baby on the back just screams Mother's Day to me, and we have Mother's Day in May. I know in the UK you've already had it, but I think America is around about the same time as us. So I'll be trying to make some more Mother's Day card videos before that time. I've added some glossy accents to the koala's eyes and noses, and I just think this is a really cute thing to do. This card is almost finished and we'll have a close-up of it. I think my original plan was to use this background with the die cut flowers, but I changed my mind or forgot, and that happens very often. So let's get on to creating the die cut flowers now. And I love making these. There's so many color combinations you can create with them using different colored cardstock and inks. What I'm doing here is I'm using my squeezed lemonade distress oxide ink, and I'm going around the outsides of the petals only. And with the next set of flowers, I'm doing the yellow on the inside more. I've kept them in the actual paper as much as possible so that it's a lot easier. You don't have to touch the inks. You don't have to hold the flowers. This way you can just hold on to the paper itself to keep steady. And sometimes I'll pop down the ink and then I'll go to another part, and then once I feel like it's a little bit more dried, I will go back to it and just blend it in a little bit better. With the skeleton style flowers, most of the pieces come out easily, but if a couple don't cut all the way through, I find using my knife to give it a little help works. I've used very thick cardstock and I didn't use a shim, so sometimes it's just a case of working out what pressure is required with some dies. Some need more than others. With the flowers I created before filming, I added a scrap piece of card under the flower centers for a little height, and then I added some vellum underneath. I used a combination of my craft knife and fussy cutting scissors to cut around the flowers. I've also added some ink to the vellum so you can see the different variations too. I don't think I mentioned the pink ink that I've used today is worn lipstick, and now I've decided to ink the pink ink to one of my scrap background frames, and I quickly realized that these lovely little brushes aren't the best for this large area, so I'll swap over to my domed sponge. I don't know if you can see already, but where there were dark parts of the pattern paper on that frame, the ink hasn't covered them up all that well, so I'll be fixing that up shortly. I'm going to use my wide double-sided tape again, and I love this tape. I really do. I will have product links to everything I'm using below, and I don't use a lot today. But I've put it onto some white card, and then that way I can add the frame straight to it. I'll cut around the frame, then I can add some glitter, and I'm using a microfine glitter today. I've had this forever, so I'm really happy to start using some glitter up. I do have a big stash of it, so maybe I'll have to do a video on creating cards as well. But I did do a disastrous background, and I will show that at the end as well, so you can see that, you know, sometimes experiments don't work so well for all of us. And so I decided that I just couldn't leave that frame as it is with those dark bits still showing through the ink. So what I've done is I've just die cut it again with white card, and then I'm inking that up. But this time I've decided anyway that I might pop some yellow down the bottom. So this was like a happy accident really, as I think it looks much nicer with the yellow down the bottom instead of just being all one colour. So now on to creating the flowers, and I'm experimenting here with adding both flower sets together, and I like how this looks, so we'll play around with that some more soon. But to put the flowers together, I like to close the petals upwards so I have a clear center part. Then I can use a tubular item to bend each petal backwards, and it doesn't matter too much on the size of your tube here, as once the bend is in the petal, you can easily adjust each petal to your liking. I'll only add glue to the flower center, and I'll place the next flower layer on, making sure the petals are sitting in the gaps so the flower looks more full. The die set cuts out 6 full flowers, so you can add them as individual flowers or layer them up as much as you want. The first time round I made 3 double layered flowers, but this time I'm making 2 flowers with 3 layers each. I'm adding one of the smaller flowers in the center as well. And then I'm just finishing them off with a white rhinestone each. I'll add a foam dot and glue to the skeleton flowers, and I use glue along with the adhesive foam dots because I like to make sure they have the best possible chance of staying on the card forever in case someone keeps it, and also because I can move them around easier while the glue is wet as well, because often I just want to move them just a touch, so this helps. I'm going to use another Mother's Day sentiment, so I'm just going to create a banner on the one end of it by cutting up the middle and then just cutting on the diagonal from each side. I'll add some foam tape to it so that it sits up nicely, and then this card is finished also. And onto this next card, and first I'm going to go over the glittered area with a dry brush to wipe away any excess glitter. Then I'll take the backing off the wide double-sided tape and adhere it straight to my card front. So the start of the card is complete, and now we just need to decorate it. I think I'll use the skeleton flowers with the vellum this time, and I'm not going to worry about them having different vellum colours. This unforgettable sentiment I found is for scrapbooking really, but I think it would also be lovely for a sympathy funeral type card. What do you think about using unforgettable on a card for someone who has just passed away? I'll be interested to see what you think. I'll pop it to the side while the glue on the flowers is drying and get on to the next card, and I think this one may be my favourite. I'm not sure. I can't wait to hear if you have a favourite card out of these 6 cards today. I've glued down the sentiment and flowers already, but I feel like it needs another colour, and these leaves will be perfect. I like the light green leaves best with these colours, so I'll cut some off the vine and add behind the flowers. Don't they look gorgeous? It really adds that extra pop of colour I needed on this card, I think. And back to this card, and I'll just add some foam tape onto the sentiment and glue that on, and then that card is finished as well. For the final card, I'll die cut the pattern paper with the background die. I haven't tried this before, but I'm going to use the diamonds and not the frame, and this is another great way to use this die. Again, I glue some of the diamonds that are still in the frame, but this time I add the white card to them rather than turning the die over and potentially risking some of them falling out and making a gluey mess. And once I feel the glue should be dry, I'll turn it over and I have the start of my pattern. You can also just pop the frame down onto some white card and then glue each diamond individually as well. And when using pattern paper with this technique, it's really important to keep the pieces in order as much as possible. I didn't want to risk adding them in the wrong spot, so I popped them all down on the white card in place to make sure I had it correct before gluing. I feel like this is such a lovely technique, and when non-crafters look at it, they would think that you've spent a long time creating the card, as all the individual pieces need to be put on. And even though it doesn't actually take that long, I created these 6 cards in a few hours. It's the editing of the video that takes 3 days. And now I'm just adding to the front of the card as well. So where the flower bunch is underneath, I'm going to add some of the flowers and leaves over the top. And it just makes it look like it's a larger and 3-dimensional type bunch of flowers. I'll also add a banner and a sentiment, and then the card is also finished. Although I don't stop adding a few bits and pieces, and again with the flowers and the leaves, I've used the bending technique to create the dimension and popped foam tape underneath as well. I'll also add some Nuvo drops to this card, and then this is the final card that's finished, and I will show you the horrible background that I created as well in a moment, and we'll have a look at all the other cards. So here's the background die I used and the 2 flower sets. Both of the flower sets are priced around $7 US, plus don't forget I have a 25% discount code for you, which is Lucy25, and all the information you need is below in the description box. To find all the details, just click on the word more. And so then here's all the spring feeling cards I created all together. I hope you've enjoyed watching these be created. I hope it's given you some ideas. You can always change up anything that I've used for what you have in your stash, or you can go on a little shopping spree with the product links that I have below. And if you have enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you could give the video a thumbs up, and I really appreciate any sharing of my videos or even my name with any crafting people. If you haven't subscribed, I hope you will. I have lots more card making ideas coming really soon. I love reading all your comments. I know I say it often, but the crafting community is just such a supportive, creative place to be, and I love it. So I'll show you photos of the cards as well now, and I hope you have a super crafting day today and stay well, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.